Hey, noble ones, welcome to Metatron's Academy. So, check this out. What does research say is the best way to learn a language from Scott H. Young? All right, so this is from 2023, but then again, I'm always interested in what people find out when they do research on this topic that, of course, I've been interested in for the last, 2 decades, maybe probably actually three decades. Anyways, without further ado, without further ado, let's see if this is good. Language learning is a topic close to my heart. Tell me about it. Few things are more exciting than talking to someone in a language that was, until recently, incomprehensible to you. But as exhilarating as it is when you get it right, learning a language can also be full of frustration, misunderstandings, and embarrassing mistakes. I think mistakes stop being embarrassing the moment you actually understand how language learning works, because at the end of the day, there isn't a single person on this green planet Earth that has never made a mistake when learning a language, right? In fact, we make mistakes in our first language, for crying out loud. So personally, I've stopped feeling embarrassed by mistakes because I recognize that they're a great way to learn. It's a tool. That's what it is. Misunderstanding, in fact, are more annoying than mistakes. But then again, it's usually something you can work around. So at the end of the day, for me, exhilarating is indeed the one adjective that represents language learning the most, at least in my experience, because it's true. There is a click, by the way. There is a moment when you've been studying a language for some time, depending on the language, that can take longer. But at one time, a click happens. It happens. I still remember when it happened in Japanese. And when that happens, you see that, like, oh gosh, I'm actually communicating. Finally. Like, I don't feel like I'm repeating a sentence and then praying to the gods that I can understand whatever the heck they're going to say back. I'm like, no, I feel like I'm understanding it. It happens, and it is indeed exhilarating. We're starting strong. All right. Most of my knowledge of learning languages come from first-hand experience. I had a bumpy time learning French during a year abroad while in college. Later, I had a better experience learning 4 different languages in a year while traveling with a friend. Okay, we were starting strong. I appreciated the fact that he says learning comes from experience. That is the best way. But why were you even trying to learn 4 languages at the same time? Come on, man. I mean, then again, let me qualify this. If you're having fun and you're not trying to pretend that you got to fluency in those languages or that you learned anything that was actually useful, but you learned a little bit, bits and bats, as they say, hey, bro, more power to you. You're having a good time, great. But you're talking about, you're writing an essay now on what's the best thing to do, how to learn a language, and already painting an idea, image that you were learning 4 languages at the same time makes it sound like those people. Those people. We know who we are talking about. I hope I'm wrong. Despite years of self-experimentation, I hadn't looked into what careful research had to say about what works and what doesn't in language learning. Recently, I decided to start to remedy that by reading a handful of books on the science of second language acquisition. Yep. The Best Way, Patsy Light Brown, and Nina Spada's How Languages Are Learned. Evaluating 6 different approaches to language learning. All right, let's have a look. So, approach number 1, accuracy first. Translation was the classical approach to teaching languages. Yeah, that was terrible, honestly. I don't even know why we work. Not that translation cannot be a useful tool, but then again, it should be like one of the latest and last things that you do when you're trying to learn a language. I actually know why. It's because language teaching, like teachers of language, particularly in public school, middle school, they're lazy. They don't want to do anything. I don't want to tell you how it is. Of course, this doesn't. You could tell me, no, I'm a teacher and I love it. Great, you're the exception. But there are realities where you just give them an assignment. I know. I was a teacher for many years, and I've seen it. I've seen it happen. Sometimes one of those times when you're like, oh gosh, what am I going to do today with the class? You know what? Guys, translate this. And then for 2 hours, you have to think about it. It's terrible. It shouldn't be like that. So teachers should be better compensated. That's a solution. Get better revenue, salary, so that they don't feel like that. And they be like, hey, I'm getting paid nicely. So let me put everything I've got into teaching. Not sit down and translate. Students were given vocabulary lists and grammar rules and expected to translate Latin or Greek text. While this may have been useful for appreciating ancient literature, for sure, it is far removed from the communication goals of modern students learning French or Spanish. Yes. So, inspired by behaviorist psychology, I thought it was behavioral, but whatever, maybe I'm wrong. The audiolingual method sought to replace this text-based approach with a call and response format. In this newer approach, students produce correct sentences by strictly following an example from the teacher. By teaching the patterns correctly from the start, bad speaking habits would develop. Yeah, of course, it's important to not create or fossilize bad speaking habits, but yeah. Accuracy first approaches have long been popular in the classroom, but among research they fell out of favor as some of their underlying assumptions started to come into question. Of course, most languages use isn't strictly imitative. True. We need to generate it. It needs to be generative as well. At first, if you have a little bit of imitation in the sense that you spice up the kind of limited sentence structures that you can create and vocabulary, and then maybe you memorize a few sentences you know you're going to use very often so that at least those you can get out quickly, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as that doesn't represent 95% of your language production. I think it's a balance there that needs to be learned. It should be considered as a boost. The rest needs to be generative, even if it's slow. We generate new sentences to express our meanings. The heavy repetition of audiolingual methods might not reflect how we acquire real language. Yeah. Languages, including second languages, emerge on a developmental time. Students appear to learn certain grammatical patterns in a fixed order, regardless of how they are taught. Okay, classroom learning has a tricky relationship to spontaneous language use. Yes, it doesn't have to, but I guess that depends. All right, input is all you need. Stephen Krashen was one of the most strident critics of the accuracy-first approach to language learning. His input hypothesis proposed that grammar drills and repetitive practice were, in addition to being inefficient, utterly ineffectual in producing real language acquisition. Instead, Krashen's theory holds that you only need comprehensible input to learn a language, and it's bullshit. Although then again, I think it's been misrepresented when people say this, because I've looked into Krashen's theory, and maybe I should make a separate video. I think people make it out to be the way people represent it, like we just read it here. Oh, you just listen. It's kind of a misrepresentation, and of course that would be bullshit. And there are people that believe that that's the way to do it. Then again, put any of those people against any of, I don't want to say any of my students, it's going to be destroyed, because you have to produce input, output. Usually, in fact, I would say you should do a 60% output, 40% input. This is my suggestion. I've tried 50-50, and I still strongly believe that you need to speak more than you listen. But listening is important, and you need to do it. Maybe increase listening if you need to take a test that is based on listening and comprehension skills. Then you can flip it, 60-40. But otherwise, you got to produce anyways. Krashen's theory has been criticized a lot. It has some interesting aspects to it. But then again, only input is nonsense. Input-based approaches have their appeal. Drills aren't particularly fun. Speaking opportunities can be scarce, exactly stressful. But looks and audio recordings are available anywhere. Of course, you should listen. Let's see number 3. Talking is everything. Another theory of language learning is that students need interactive communication, not just input. Not just input, yes, but I wouldn't say that talking is everything. It's a balance, right? Just like reality. Just like when you learn your first language, you balance out a little bit of listening, a little bit of speaking, surrounding yourself in the language. Metatron's output hypothesis flipped Krashen's input hypothesis around, arguing that the need to express more complex ideas could be a driver of language learning. Similarly, Michael Long's interaction hypothesis argued that interactions, not just input, were essential for learning. I agree, although then again, believe it or not, those interactions can be with yourself. Like, you can speak on your own and still improve very quickly. Eventually, you'll have to confront natives because the kind of patterns that they are going to use when they speak back to you might not be what you were trying to create yourself, what you were imagining. But speaking to yourself, speaking on your own, like a madman. I've done it for many years, my friends. It works. Learn a language on the side. Time is a major constraint on language learning. Young children receive tens of thousands of hours of exposure in their native language. How can ever a clever adult compete with only 30 minutes per week? Well, yeah, of course. 30 minutes per week is nonsense. You have to do it every day. One solution to this dilemma is to combine language learning with other academic goals. In these programs, the language isn't taught as a separate class, but as a medium of instruction for other classes. That's not bad. But in reality, it's immersion and in your fun stuff as well. Number 5. Study in the proper sequence. In the late 1980s, so pretty old research by now, Manfred Peinman, I don't know, and colleagues showed that the rules of language cannot simply be learned in any order. Second language learners, like children learning their mother tongue, acquired grammatical rules in a fixed order that did not change with instruction. Yes, but let's be careful how much we push this. We need to do what children do, because some things overlap, some things don't. At the end of the day, adults are not children. According to this view, some features of a language, such as vocabulary, can be taught at any time. Other features, like using the word did to turn a sentence into a question in English, exempli grazie, where did you put it, proceed on a fixed developmental sequence. That's fine. Yeah, sure. I don't have a problem with that. What do you guys think? 6. Get it right in the end. Reviewing the previous approaches along with decades of accumulated research, Light, Brown, and Spada argue that we should avoid some of the excesses of past language learning fads. I agree. Unlike the audiolingual approach, students should have a chance to use the language meaningfully from the beginning. Yeah. However, rather than focusing on pure input, interactions, or immersion approaches, most students will find some focus on the forms of a language helpful in achieving accurate level of speech. So at the end of the day, you need to do a little bit of everything, but I do strongly emphasize, at least in the methods that I've used, both for learning and teaching, output is king. Reflecting on my approach to language learning, it was interesting to read about these theories and the heated debates they have provoked, in part because my language learning approach doesn't neatly fit into any of them. I think that's fine, because what that tells me, whoever you are, is that your language approach, got a message. Your language approach is a mix. And mix is good. Mix is good because it also allows you to try things out. And you don't have to keep it solid. You don't have to keep it dogmatic. You can try this, try that, and see what works, what mental models, for instance, what learning models work best, because the more you try, of course, it's good to also learn from other people's mistakes and successes, because that way you don't have to literally try everything on your own. But yeah, in general, let's read the end. Language learning continues to fascinate and occasionally frustrate me, so I enjoyed reading Light, Brown, and Spada's in-depth discussion of what science has discovered about it. You know, this was actually kind of cool. I see they have got related articles, we might check them out, but I usually read these articles because I enjoy the kind of conversations that they spark in the comments section, so absolutely, it is now your turn. Feel free to chime in and let us know what you think, and then I'll have a look at the comments and see if they can spark another discussion for a different topic for another video. But for today, thank you for watching and joining Metatron's Academy. Have a good one. If you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment to check out my Patreon page. With as little as a $5 support, you can help us ensure that we can continue to produce high quality and high researched content. And at the same time, you get access to polls, extra videos, unlisted streams, and much more. Thank you so much.